let's look at dissemination. Dissemination means how are things spread from point A to point B. Now, when we're dealing with plants, we've got two things we've got to look at. We've got to look at gametes. We have to look at offspring. So how are things spread in here? And this becomes interesting. So spread, we're looking at going from point A to point B. We could talk about gametes, and in this case, what we're really talking about is pollen, because when you started to get higher land plants, the female gamete became non-modal. It didn't move, so therefore, we're talking about something staying there, which means the pollen had to get up to it. And over here, we've got two pictures of pollen. One is gymnosperm pollen, one is an angiosperm pollen. And these become our gametes that we're going to spread from point A to point B. The other thing we can talk about are seeds. Now, seeds are really offspring. So we're looking at the young, and how are we going to transmit the young from point A to point B, which allows for spread of the material. Here's a picture of seeds. These are tiny little seeds, and they're very interesting. Here's another type of seed, and we'll talk about how that goes. This is Bidens pilosa. Here we've got some seed that looks like bird seed, and you're right, this is millet. And millet is one of the things that looks like bird seed, but it's often eaten around the world as a food source. We've got these guys. This is a type of seed, and this is from milkweed. Let's look at how this works. Pollen, there's our pollen. Pollen gets transmitted often in the air, which means the wind blows, and as the wind blows, it takes the pollen with it. And in North Florida, when it takes the pollen with it, your car turns green, and you've got all this green stuff all over your car, and there's not much you can do about it because it's there. But air is one of the major ways that we are able to transmit pollen. Insects is another way. We've got the little itty bitty bee, and a busy little bee goes around from flower to flower. It collects nectar, but as it collects nectar, it also picks up pollen. Here is a bee feeding on a mustard plant. On the leg, you can see where it is gathering the pollen that it's going to collect, that it's going to take back to the hive, that they are going to use to be able to produce different foods with that. We also have animals, and animals can transmit pollen. This is a picture of a bat on eucalyptus, and what you see is the bat is coming in here. The bat is feeding on the eucalyptus nectar, but as it does that, it will invariably get pollen from the eucalyptus onto its face, and the next time it visits another flower, it will transmit that pollen. Therefore, you get cross-pollination. We can deal the same way with seeds. Seeds can be transmitted by wind. What we've got here is we've got a picture of milkweed, and you can see the little roundish, flattened out seeds, and they are attached to these little gossamers that will catch the wind, and the wind will take it, and the wind will blow these seeds. Now, how far a distance can these go? I've heard that these can go up to 40 to 50 miles, that they can be found at a couple miles in altitude. And what will happen is the junction between the seed and the little gossamer will dry out. When that happens, the little gossamer will fly away and the seed will drop down onto the ground, even if it's from miles up in the air. And when it does that, it will be transmitted a rather large distance. We can transmit seed by animals. This is Bidens pilosa. You see the little hooks on the end of it? The little hooks are like Velcro. They will stick on your clothing. They will stick on animal fur. And when they stick on, the animal doesn't even know it's there. It runs off. Eventually they fall off and it's transmitted the seed. We go back to our proso millet. We said it looks like bird seed. Things like this get eaten by animals. This is not a bird. That is a possum. This possum's eating corn. And what you see is it's eating it. It's going to take some of it back for its kids. It's going to drop some of it. It's not going to chew it all properly. And some of it's going to get through, and that could start the next generation of corn. Or if it ate some of these smaller seeds, some of the smaller seeds are going to get right through its digestive system without having been broken down. We normally think of seeds being transmitted by birds. This is a black-capped titmouse. And it was picking up these seeds at the feeder. And as soon as it picked up the seed, it would fly off to a bush to be able to consume the seed because it didn't want to be exposed in the open. Occasionally, as it flew off to the place where it was going to consume the seed, it would drop the seed. If it dropped the seed, it's now transmitted the seed to another place. And then it would come back and it would grab another one. It did this very rapidly. It would fly in, grab something, fly out. And that way it protected itself from predators. But you can see in this particular case, you've got animals that can transmit seeds from point A to point B. This is a cardinal. It's got a seed in its mouth, and this actually is a seed that was dropped off of that bird feeder that they were on. And it picks up the seeds and it takes the seeds back to its young. It will take the seed off to a different spot where it can consume it so that it does not stay exposed for a larger predator. So when we look at dissemination. We have dissemination of pollen. We have dissemination of seeds. They kind of work the same sort of way, but they're a little bit different in the ways that they do these. And they all become very interesting to understand because this is the way nature sends seeds from point A to point B.